Hey job seekers, I'm going to teach you the exact strategies to build a six-figure resume template. And just for context, I'm the founder at resumewizard101.com, where I've helped 20,000 job seekers land roles at their target companies. So I know a thing or two about resumes, given that I've reviewed probably close to 50,000 in my full lifecycle recruiting experience. And these are things that I see work all the time if you actually go and tailor your resume. I would never take one resume and just try and mass apply to positions because it doesn't work, especially in a market like this one. So let's just jump right into it. So when we look at the resume, first thing you obviously want to include is your first and last name, and then any relevant credential if you have one. So this can be things like an MBA, or if you're targeting like a project management role, you probably put something like a PMP up at the top here. But this just brings that immediate credential that you hold, this very powerful credential, up to the top. So now the way that they assess your resume really changes, because now they see, oh, well, this person's had an MBA before. So now they make all these positive assumptions about your experience just by seeing that. And this is important, I think, because once you have over 2 years of experience, professional experience, you're going to drop your education all the way down to the bottom of your resume. It's not relevant to include at the top anymore because professional experience outweighs education. And so that's why I would always take that MBA, if you have one or something relevant, and put it up at the top here, so they at least recognize that you have it. Now, when we go to the next line over, you're going to notice city, state, and zip code. That's all a recruiter needs. We don't need your full address, so please don't send it to us. Your phone number, you don't need to include like the words phone or mobile. I see people do this. Like just list the phone number you want us to call. Email, just make sure it's hyperlinked. Don't use emails like eagle103@gmail.com. Like that doesn't seem professional. Just make sure, you have an email with first and last name, maybe a few digits after that. Same thing with your LinkedIn. You can customize your LinkedIn URL so it's just first and last name like that, and then make sure to hyperlink it. So this is critical too, to add the LinkedIn, because 97% of employers today look at your LinkedIn profile. And I have seen candidates get nixed just for not including a LinkedIn on their resume. So always make sure that's up at the top of your resume, and follow a format like this where it's a top to bottom approach, where you're listing out information all in one kind of set linear way, as opposed to like a column going down the entire left-hand side of the page, because recruiters don't like to read one column on the left-hand side and then all the other information on the right-hand side. We just like to read top to bottom. The target job title is what we want to see next. So a target job title is going to be, of course, that role in the job description that you're targeting. So you would look at, okay, well, what does the job description say? My recommendation is tailor it to the job description's title, because all it is you telling an employer, hey, this is what I'm going for next. And you're not lying, because they're going to see in your professional experience what your actual job titles were. So this is where I would always include that title, because it's also a keyword that realistically, like most recruiters will be looking for. It's like, if I see that job title, was it somewhere on the resume or it was held by a job seeker, they have a much higher chance of getting into an interview. So, and it also communicates to them that if you were given an offer, and let's say you're pivoting into a different industry, that you are someone who'd likely accept that offer, as opposed to going for a completely different, job title because we couldn't recognize that you were trying to pivot. So just tell them, this is the job title I want, tailor it to that job description. If it's a project manager and you were a sales director, like put project manager up here is what I'm trying to say. Now, the next line over, delivering multi-million-dollar revenue growth and AI stream workflows across Fortune 100 companies. This is called a value proposition. And the whole purpose of a unique value proposition is to tell somebody what uniquely differentiates you among all the other candidates who are on that job market looking at that job description. Okay, so when you think about all the other people who are qualified, many will be as equally qualified as you. Some will be more qualified than you. So what is it about you that you can tell to an employer immediately at the top of your resume that would separate you from them? That's something you need to make sure you're capturing. And, here's an example on the right-hand side, driving 8-figure growth and process automation across global SaaS firms. The reason this works is because A, it tells a recruiter what they need to know about what actually separates you. And B, if you do it the right way, you're speaking to the direct challenges that the company is having. So, for example, when we look at this one up here, multi-million-dollar revenue growth, for someone in the sales space, that would be relevant to include, because not everyone's dealt with multi-million-dollar budgets before. Some companies, maybe they're selling a product that's like $50 a pop, and the annual, sales numbers look like 50,000, like that's not something that would differentiate you. So I probably wouldn't include it. But if you're working with, multi-million-dollar contracts, that's something I would immediately call out. And then AI streamlined workflows, maybe you're applying to an AI company or a tech company. That would be something relevant to call out that would differentiate you from other people who are possibly pivoting into that tech industry. And then across Fortune 100 companies, when we see pedigree, when we see that you've worked at top companies, Fortune 100s, now we start to make assumptions about how well you've been trained, because we know that, Fortune 500 companies generally pour tons of dollars into training people the right way. And so now, again, when I look through the rest of the resume, a lot of positive assumptions come about. Now, not everyone's done these kinds of things before, so you just have to think, okay, well, what are my greatest strengths? And are my greatest strengths different from those that are also qualified to do this job? If it's something that everybody in sales can do, then it's probably not something I want to make sure I'm including in a value proposition. So below that, you're going to look at your professional summary. Don't do the big chunky paragraphs. They don't work. When we're thinking about what to include in this summary section, I like to drop it into 4 to 5 bullet points that clearly convey things like your years of experience or different industries you've worked in, or the size of the teams that you've worked with, or the revenue involved in what you did. And you want to avoid those cliche phrases like proven track record or adept in doing this or results driven or dynamic self-starter, because the problem is these are just self-descriptors. They don't differentiate you from anyone else who is on the job market. You want to give someone pure evidence for what you've done, not things that you've described yourself as. If I see the evidence behind what you did, I'm going to be a lot more likely to move forward with you as a candidate. So just think in terms of, okay, well, what's real proof I can actually show without all the extra BS fluff that nobody wants to see, okay? And so when we look at this next line over, we're just thinking to, okay, well, how can I make sure to communicate my most relevant accomplishments? So think of this as almost like a career highlights section. Drove a 3 times increase in qualified leads by launching a full funnel content strategy and paid media campaigns for a health tech startup operating in 5 states. This tells me a lot about what I need to know, because I can see revenue generation involved in what you did. I can see market awareness by bringing in qualified leads. Other things that we look at as recruiters would be like revenue generating activities. So how did you help companies make more money? We'll look for process efficiencies. So how did you help companies come up with solutions to any inefficiencies that were taking place? We look for company growth. So from the time you joined a company to the time you left the company, how do you help that company grow? We will look for how you served customers and clients that you've worked with. We will look for how did you help other employees? Did you help your hiring managers? So if you can translate this information, now people can start to assess, okay, well, he's mentored, trained, recruited people before. I think he'd be able to do the same thing for us. And now that hiring manager starts to think in more results-based mode rather than, okay, well, what are the costs going to be involved in hiring this person? You want to get them into results-based thinking. That's how you sell someone on your experience. And so you show them how you've helped them make money, how you've helped them save time, how you've helped their team members. They're going to be a lot more likely to want to move forward with you and call all of that information up to the top. Now, the next section over areas of emphasis, this can be called skills, this can be called core competencies, whatever you want. But the whole purpose of this section is to look at that job description, see what transferable skills align with the roles that you're targeting, and then include those in your resume. You don't want to take every single skill from the JD, because then it's obvious to a recruiter that you're just trying to align as closely as you can. We're not going to believe it then if you take everything from that JD, but take the most relevant pieces that you know that job descriptions, pain points are speaking to, and include those as core competencies. And think to the hard skills. Hard skills are a lot more relevant, especially to hiring managers, than soft skills are in the resume. Okay, that doesn't mean you don't need to have them. You need to have them, but you don't want to list communication in your resume, because that is a soft skill that anyone can put down, and it's pretty subjective too. So make sure to just list out, okay, well, what are the most relevant hard skills for this core competency section? And during the interview process, we will assess whether or not you have the soft skills if we are good recruiters or good hiring managers and understand what questions to ask. And we'll ask you questions like those behavioral-based interview questions that are designed to help us understand those things. Now, below that section, the professional experience area. This is where I would include company name first, month and year, never just include the year of what you've done. No recruiter wants to see that. Your job title. So this should be the job title that you've held, of course. Now there's a little gray area here. You can always change your job title if the function of the role is similar to that of a different role that makes more sense for the role you're applying to. So like an example of this would be a talent acquisition consultant at a different company. And so if that job title is the same function and you did the same things, it's totally okay to change your job title to match what's closer to that JD you're applying to, because different companies have different job titles and different names for those job titles. The whole point is, okay, well, how can I make sure it aligns to the role, but you're not fabricating experience either? You never want to do that. Now, relevant skills is a section I personally like to add. You don't have to have it, but this will help someone grasp the skills that you picked up in a specific company that you've worked at. And below that section, you'll see a brief description of the company that you worked with. Now, if you're working with companies like Amazon, Facebook, large companies people already know, sometimes you just don't need to necessarily include this information. So it's completely up to you whether you want to or not. But if it's not a well-known company, you may want to talk about the industry, the reach, the employee size, the revenue, the role structure, who you reported to. These things are very relevant for us to understand. So it's a good way to really break down, okay, well, am I including the right information? And I know I'm going over on time here, but I think a lot of this information will be relevant to helping you. Now, when we look at the bullet templates that I've created, these are based on the universally attractive elements that recruiters look for in a resume. So you want to outline things like your role, your team structure, who you reported to, main responsibilities, like that's fine. But there are specific things you want to call out. So in company overview, what did the company do? What was the size of the teams that you worked with? What did the location look like? And then annual revenue, if you know what those numbers look like. With team and reporting, you can talk to the company's size, who you reported to, the business objectives. With the scale, this is just telling us the overall scope of the work that you did. So this can be like the client volume workload that you worked with, the product scale. With revenue and cost impact, again, how did you help companies make money or save money or increase, revenue by, X percentage? Like tell us what you did. If you can include a metric, it's going to make the resume a lot stronger. Time, this is just adding a metric about speed, delivery time, or project turnarounds. So here are just like examples of how you can actually go and pull that information into actual bullet points. So I just came up with some ideas for you guys here in these sample bullets. So this would be a good example of a bullet. Owned and optimized the entire inbound marketing funnel by identifying friction points and leading a landing page overhaul, which boosted inbound lead conversions by 32% in 6 months. So I see the scope involved in what they did. I can see owned and optimized. So this is the action verbs that they're starting with. So you always want to start off with an action verb. The better action verbs are going to tell me what you did, not what your team members did. Because when you're writing a resume, you're not bringing your team along with you to another position. It's just you. If you can avoid using words like helped to start off a resume bullet, then do it. Like avoid it. So owned would be a good one. I see other good ones that used to be good, like spearheaded or pioneered or championed, but now ChatGPT uses all of those. So don't use them, because if you use the ones that ChatGPT uses, now it looks like your resume was written by AI. So think, okay, well, how can I make sure to avoid the cliche ones that I always see ChatGPT coming up with? The other reason that this is good is it tells me the context for what you did. Every one of your resume bullets should tell me not just what you did, but what happened as a result of you doing the things that you did. Because when it tells me the outcomes, now it's more of an accomplishment-based resume that I was telling you about. The responsibility-based resumes just tell me a list of tasks that you did. And this is how I see most resumes being built, or they include the impact, but they don't associate it with a metric. So now there's no real tangible evidence. If you don't include a metric, then it looks like something you could have easily just pulled from the job description. And once you add a metric in there, now it's something that I can only tie to you. And so you need to make sure that you add whatever you can think of in terms of a metric to your resume bullets, so I can see the real measurable outcome, because hiring managers cannot assess impact the right way if they don't have a measurable outcome with it. So quantify where you can. Next one over, streamline CRM adoption by crafting a comprehensive training guide, reducing new hire onboarding time by 40%. So this just goes back to process efficiencies. So you're going to see these 7 areas that are universally attractive to recruiters. Just make sure to include them in your resume bullets. So revenue impact, customer or client impact, market visibility, employee experience, process improvements, dollars saved or cost reductions, and company growth. You speak to those elements in your resume, you're going to see a lot more success. And there's little examples on how you can do that with each one and how you can quantify them. The last section is going to be your education and certifications. Again, if you've graduated more than 2 years ago and you have professional experience, drop this to the bottom of your resume. It doesn't become as relevant as your actual professional experience. We want to see your real world experience as opposed to education. Technical skills. This is the last section that I would include in a resume. Sometimes, if you're on certain boards or things like that, then you may want to include a section like that. But technical skills really are just going to tell me, what do your technical skills look like? And these can be different tools that you've used. So things like Slack, if you're in the sales space, or Salesforce or Google Analytics, like these are all different kinds of technical skills. Once you go into IT space, like there's going to be a lot more that you can include, and you can break it down by specific like languages, coding languages, etc., to make it easier for recruiters to follow. So this is the way that I would go about building a resume. And just a quick recap. Make sure your resume is, concise as it can be, but relevant, where you're continuing to hook the reader. And once you stop hooking the reader with relevant information, that's where your resume should realistically stop. But don't stop halfway down a page, because then it just looks like a bunch of empty white space you couldn't fill. I would probably not go beyond 3 pages of a resume in this job market today. I think 2 or 3 pages of a resume is solid for someone with more than 4 years of experience. If you have less than 4 years of experience, you can probably condense everything down to 1 page. So it doesn't matter, again, whether your resume is 1 page versus 2 pages, as long as you're consistently hooking the reader with relevant information and transferable skills that they want to see. They just need to assess whether you're qualified for the role and what differentiates you among everyone else. And that's how you build an accomplishment-based resume. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I'm planning to release this template on a whole new website I'm building out right now, and it's going to have all kinds of free resources that job seekers can use to help them in their job search, and lots of great templates, lots of interview guides, things like this. And it's going to be something that really changes the game for job seekers.